Alex here with a high conflict child custody video on gray areas. This is one of those videos that really doesn't offer much of a legal solution, but it at least explains to people what's going on inside the mind of a high conflict child custody ex and why it is so different from what everyone else is going through when they separate, because it is very different. I do talk about gray areas in a different way in the video, Many Fine Lines, and in that video I focus more on the different legal standards that the court uses when approaching certain conflicts, legal conflicts specifically, and how on occasion your high conflict ex will make a mistake and they will basically go right up to the line in one area of the law, unwittingly crossing another area of the law. But in this video, I'm not going to really focus on that particular angle. I guess you could say, in a way, it might sort of go into court orders and how there are gray areas in court orders. In fact, that probably is going to resonate a lot more with people. But all of that being said, there really are, there's more than two ways of thinking. I was going to say there are two ways of thinking, but there's many different ways that a high conflict ex can approach their case. But one of the most common and probably guaranteed way when it comes to a guaranteed tactic when it comes to high conflict exes is to exploit gray areas in the orders, in decision making, anything you can really imagine when it comes to dealing with custody of the child. What's yours is yours, what's theirs is theirs, and what's gray is theirs. And it's to the point of severe obnoxiousness, and it's also to the point of actually harming the child. It does result in them making decisions that are not in the best interest of the child, which can later be used against them on a best interest analysis that may come up during, I don't know, a motion to modify physical or legal custody, or maybe you haven't even gone to trial yet, and that's when it comes up. But there are going to be these strict areas of the law, or in that are identified by your court orders that state a certain thing must be done. And there are some high conflict exes that will violate those, but usually it's the exes that are confident you're not going to do anything about it. If it's an ex that is concerned that you might take them back to court and hold them in contempt, then they won't typically violate an area of a court order that is very strictly defined and controlled and leaves little wiggle room. Sometimes they'll still try and do it with pretexts. So if you want to know more of what I'm talking about, watch the video Narcissistic Pretexting. But it's a tactic where they concoct some kind of excuse and then they use that to violate the court's order, and they sort of have it there as a shield just in case you take them back to court, so that they can say, yeah, I did violate this order, however I have an excuse and this is what it is. But for the most part, and this especially will begin to apply if you are holding your ex's feet to the fire, if you are taking them back to court, and if you are especially winning, they will back off. They won't do that anymore, and they'll just try to exploit these gray areas in the court's orders. And so what I am going to do is give you a few examples, and towards the end of the video, maybe I'll have some solutions that I come up with along the way. But one example might be your court's order requiring that you are a part of the child's medical appointments, the child's dental appointments, the child's vision appointments, educational appointments. I guess you could call them like parent-teacher meetings, stuff like that. Those are frequently in, the court's order. And what the ex might do in that situation is going to be extremely infuriating, but it's going to be what they perceive to be a gray area. And so the example that I was going to state was, okay, you're allowed to come to these appointments, but I'm going to schedule all of them. And if you try to schedule one, then they'll just call in and change the appointment just to get under your skin. Another thing that they might do is, let's say the judge says you have to have notice, but they don't say how much, so they give you a day's notice. And another thing that I used to have to deal with was my ex trying to figure out the days that I'd have to go to work so that she could schedule appointments on those days when I'd have to go to work. They get some sense of satisfaction out of taking over all of these areas that haven't been carefully defined by the court. And to them, it's kind of a game. It's like, what are you going to do about it? The court didn't say that you get to have this, so I get to. Yeah, you're going to be thinking to yourself, well, the court didn't say you get to do that either. They kind of just left that open to us. But to them, that means anything that wasn't specifically taken from them is theirs. And so they'll try to dominate the entire custodial situation. Another example that I would have to deal with, and this was one of the most absolutely infuriating, when I had primary physical custody, and she would come to the first day of school, and she'd take everything. So he would have on his desk his folders, his books, a little bag, and all of these items were items that he would need to take to school. And she was the non-custodial parent, and she would go up and take them. And I'd be like, what are you doing? I wouldn't confront her because, of course, that's what she wanted. I'd be like, what are you doing? He's going to be with me through this whole week, and he needs to take those to school tomorrow. And it's like, that's the kind of nonsense you have to deal with. Then you'll get like an email a couple hours later saying, hey, I need to drop this stuff off. You could have just not taken it. But it's to get under your skin. It's to drive you crazy. I frequently describe this as exercising their parental rights as obnoxiously as possible. So, the court orders that I'm supposed to have primary physical custody, that I'm supposed to have the child on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But the court doesn't say anything about who's supposed to get the supplies. Now, two parents who are low conflict parents are going to use logic and rational thinking, and they probably wouldn't even call it rational thinking. It would just be so obvious that it would be instinct for a normal non-conflict parent or low conflict parent to think to myself, Dad's going to have the kid tomorrow for school. He's going to take the stuff home with him, obviously. Like, it would be it wouldn't even be a thought. It would just be automatically, it would just occur automatically in their mind. But the high conflict person is thinking, how can I drive this other person insane? Well, the court order says he's supposed to have the child all week, but it doesn't say anything there about me not being able to take the supplies. So they'll take the supplies. I've talked about that previous video earlier on where, I think it was Many Fine Lines, where you can use antics like this in court to further curtail your ex's parental rights. And you can. Just because they're not violating the court's order doesn't mean that they're not acting in ways that harm the child, or in ways that are I can actually say in ways that are harm the child, because one of the best interest statutes actually specifically covers doing things like that. I think it's a source of conflict. That's one of them. And there's another one that says failure to cooperate to meet the needs of the child. So that might actually be the more applicable one. So your ex could go to court and say, yeah, I took the supplies, but you didn't say I couldn't in the orders. And the judge could say, well, that's a failure to cooperate to meet the needs of the child under the best interest factors. By the way, I have a video on those. It's called Best Interest of the Child, where I go through the Nevada factors. Many of the other states have similar factors. Anyway, the court could take action on something like that. But it's not something that many of them understand, because they think in ways, often these black and white ways. Am I breaking a rule? And if not, then why are you complaining? They're not thinking, am I harming my child? They're thinking, am I breaking a rule? Am I doing something I'm not supposed to do? I think some people refer to them as adults living, as children living in an adult body, because they have that sort of toddler mentality of where they can't really think in more than one dimension, and they can't really see how they're impacting their child as much as they can see. As much as they can say, hey, I'm following all the rules, don't get upset at me, you're the one that set these broken rules up. That's a little bit of the whole blame side that goes into often that style of thinking. But anyway, I think that's one of my better examples, the example where she just took the school supplies. The other areas were, for the most part, in that way, it had to do often with like exchanges. So there was an order, that we had to exchange the child at certain dates and certain times. However, nothing in the order said you could, send somebody else to go pick the child up. Now, a low conflict parent is going to understand, hey, my ex had to go to work. They sent their mom to pick the child up. or they sent their boyfriend or their girlfriend. But a high conflict parent is going to find a reason to get in the way of that. Oh, well, I don't know who that person is. It's like, it's my mom. How do you not know who they are? Or, oh, the court order said you had to pick the child up. You can't send somebody else. They'll do things like that. And of course, the court didn't actually specify that in its order, so in their mind they can get away with that. In my case, I dealt with this frequently by going back to court and modifying the orders. Like, I did have to go to court and get it put into the order that we could send a designee to get the child. I had to do something like that because she would play games with it. And I thought maybe towards the end of this video that I would tell my viewers that that's the correct approach. In fact, for years, I thought that's what the correct approach was. I thought that it was the court's fault. I thought the judge should know better, and that they should make the orders as specifically as possible, because the high conflict X is going to look for loopholes and gray areas. And I thought that was the role of the court in these child custody cases. It was to tell the parents what to do because they were obviously not able to do it on their own. Later, towards the end of my high conflict child custody dispute, and in the aftermath, I guess you could say, I have come to a realization that judges really shouldn't be doing that. Judges should not be so focused on closing loopholes and putting every little teeny tiny detail in their court orders out of a fear that one of the parents is going to exploit it. Because what it comes down to is the impossibility of it all. A judge is not going to be there to boss you guys around all the time. You're going to be lucky if you can get in front of that judge once every 2 months. And the amount of damage a child is going to suffer while waiting to get back in front of that judge it's unforgivable. It's outrageous. So what I'm kind of leading to here is courts, and hopefully parents will be able to do this, they should return to court and say, look how they are treating these gray areas. Look what she's doing at exchanges. She's saying that if I send a designee, she can't drop the child off. She's saying that the court order didn't say I couldn't take the kid's school books, despite the fact that I'm coming back to school tomorrow to drop the kid off. She's saying, or he's saying, point out these ridiculous interpretations of these gray areas, not in the context of they need more guidance, enter a new order, but in the context of they lack a parental compass entirely, and they should be deprived of custody of their child. That's the sad truth of it. That's what should be happening. A court can only do what's in the best interest of the child within the context of the law. And this approach of let's just enter a new order with more carefully defined parameters is a failing approach, and it's an injustice to the child. It's like the high conflict parent is playing a game, and so you, the judge, are going to actually play that game with them. Don't play the game with the high conflict parent. This is sort of a message to the judges and to the people, to the litigants. Don't play that game with them. If they are playing games with the court's orders and with the child's best interests, then the response is not to continue to play that game with them. The response is to severely curtail their parental rights. In the end, that is what the child needs. The child needs stability. The child doesn't need justice once every 2 months when you get back to court. That's a joke. The child needs a stable, consistent life. And if one of the parents is exercising their discretion in ways that are damaging to the child, in ways that are nonsensical in nature, the only thing you could do is put that parent in a teeny tiny box. Take away their physical custody, take away their legal custody, take away their unsupervised visits. And if they don't stop, you're going to end up having to do what I did in my case, terminate their parental rights. It sounds so harsh, but most parents don't play games with their child's needs. Most don't. Most parents, they don't think to themselves, well, am I going to violate the court's order if I do this? They don't think to themselves, am I going to drive my ex nuts or get revenge on them if I do this? They think to themselves, which one's better for our son or daughter? That's what they think. The first thought isn't the court's order. The first thought is what's best for the kids. And so oftentimes when it comes to gray areas, low conflict parents, they come to a meeting of the minds on what's best. The order doesn't say what we're supposed to do here, but since you're going to be taking him to school tomorrow, here's his books. That's what normal people do. So if you're dealing with that type of person, or if you just, it's one of the things that I think I have said before in videos, but I can't remember which one, is parents don't really take custody away from the other parent. What happens is a bad actor forfeits or loses custody through their own insane conduct. Think of it less as you, whether it's the litigant or the judge, taking away something that they have. Think of it more as them just giving it away or forfeiting it, because that's what they're doing. When they take actions that damage the child, that make no sense, they are voluntarily doing things to lose custody of their child. Of course, from the perspective of the abuser, it's going to be, oh, you took my rights and you took my kid. That's what they're always going to say. But from the perspective of everyone else, it should really be, you did it to yourself because you did. So I'm going to go ahead and end this video now. I hope it gives my viewers a whole lot of insight into what a high conflict person is going to do with gray areas. And I hope that the solution is less, let's get more specific orders, and more, we're just going to have to curtail their parental rights. That really, in the end, is the only thing that works. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off now, and I will see you guys next time.